So thinking of Kathleen's story and what's keeping me busy, I've been playing a lot of chess during the pandemic. I love the structure of it. It's a simple board with simple rules, but endless complications. When I started playing chess again, I had a goal of getting a rating of 1400. I worked hard at it. I analyzed my games. I observed players better than me, learned from them, and I did it. I accomplished my goal of 1400. Yes. But when I set the goal of 1400, I also set a stretch goal of 1600. Well, I studied and studied and studied, and I watched lessons by some of the best teachers on YouTube. I bought classic chess books and played along with the games in the books. I analyzed my own games for weaknesses, and I did it. If I'm having a good day now, my chess score is over 1600. Yes. But when I set that goal of 1400 and the stretch goal of 1600, I also set the unimaginable goal of 1800. I now believe that if I work on my visioning and practice openings and learn some new patterns, I might get there in a year or two if this pandemic keeps going. It seems achievable now. But then I consider, will I consider it a mission accomplished if I get 1800? Will I put the chessboard aside and move on to other things? Or will I aim even higher and set a goal of 2000? Even just thinking about that brings a smile to my face. Can you imagine 2000? But part of me feels a sadness when I think of chasing 2000. And perhaps you feel it now listening to me talk about chess. There's this nagging feeling of so what? In the grand scheme of things, why chess? I wonder if you have had any of that in your pandemic. You have something that gets you through the day, but it doesn't bring satisfaction in its fullness. You have a coping mechanism to handle the loneliness or the numbness or the anxiety of the pandemic, and it just gets you through the day. Maybe you've been playing a lot of Sudoku or doing crossword puzzles. Maybe you've gotten into the habit of finding another show on Netflix. Maybe you've been reorganizing the pens in your desk drawer just one more time and they'll be perfect. We find a way through our day where we make do. And if you're having a fabulous pandemic, maybe you're an introvert, I honor that. And if you're completely overwhelmed by the pandemic and your dog doesn't give you a moment's break, I honor that too. It can all be too much. I spoke with a friend about the incomplete satisfaction of it all. And she said, give yourself a break. We're in a pandemic. It is okay to have comfort food. Comfort food is food that isn't necessarily nutritious, but you're comfortable with it. It gets you through the day. You deserve it and you need it. But comfort food is only comforting for so long, and then it can give you a stomachache. As the pandemic has dragged on, I felt more of the emptiness of it. My coping mechanisms have served me, but they've also distracted me from a more meaningful life. And spiritual distraction is a risky place to be. We are a liberal religion. We're committed to having active minds and ongoing discernment. But what happens when we don't have the bandwidth for that? When you're at your wit's end and your inner explorer is completely frazzled, spiritual exploration might be the first thing to go. Spiritual distraction is also risky because we need all of our spiritual powers to stay connected to the interdependent web of life. In moments of crisis, whether public health crisis, political crisis, economic crisis, in times of crisis, people often latch on to something familiar. There can be a rise of nationalism or sectarianism. Even this question of whether or not to take a vaccine is causing rifts in society. We need all of our spiritual powers to keep the interdependent web together. We cannot allow for spiritual distraction, even when we're feeling overwhelmed. This spiritual distraction, letting ourselves get into unsatisfying habits just to get through the day, is also risky because we are creatures of habit. The patterns we get into today will stay with us long after the pandemic is over. I think of people who came of age during the Great Depression and could never stop pinching pennies long after they could have released themselves into affluence. Their habits were formed in crisis. Kids these days are growing up without in-person social connection with peers. What will be the effect of that? How can we minimize that effect? We cannot afford spiritual distraction in these times because our spiritual practices or lack thereof will stay with us even after the pandemic is history. Our practices these times console us, but C.S. Lewis says that spiritual consolation is not enough. If you're going to church for consolation, you will not find it. C.S. Lewis says that religion is much, much bigger than consolation. Yes, you might find consolation in religion, but only if you step into a much larger story. So I am not here to console you in these times. Or rather, I'm not here merely to console you. Instead, I'm here to invite you into a much larger story. Liberal religion can have a focus on liberty, on everyone's unique journey. Each of us is on a unique journey, and we celebrate that as a vital part of our liberal religion. But what happens on that journey? What fires do you come across in your spiritual journey? What happens when you realize that some spiritual fires need tending, and you are called to tend them? On your journey, what wells do you discover that feed your soul? What wells do you discover that are worth returning to? What happens when our spiritual journey leads us somewhere worth inhabiting? When we sing the song Spirit of Life, we sing, "Roots hold me close, wings set me free." What roots are holding us close? What well do we drink from? What fire do we tend? Those of us who are atheists might be rooted in our values and our vision. We believe in everyone's worth. We believe in truth, justice, and compassion, and other wonderful things. Those of us who are theists might be rooted in our God, staying rooted by daily prayer and channeling God's grace into our actions. Those of us who are pagan might be rooted in the earth and the web of life, inhabiting respect for the life force. And those of us who are mystics might be rooted in that awesome mystery we find ourselves within and surrounded by. In this congregation, we come together to honor and celebrate our roots, even if we don't agree on what they are. Liberal religion does not mean that we have no roots. It means that we value being together in community that includes pluralistic belief about roots. And perhaps there is some general agreement about what we're rooted in. I think again of the song we just listened to and the lyric, "In this great turning, we shall learn to lead in love." We believe in love, the healing power of love, the transformative power of love. And yes, we believe that transformation is possible. We are an optimistic bunch. We believe that there can be a great turning in which we learn a better way to live, a more loving way to live. We are rooted in love, and we are rooted in hope for this better way. And if that doesn't resonate with you right now, I would be glad to talk with you about it. During a pandemic, we do not have to go full on. We do not have to keep driving forward with all of the projects we had going on a year ago when the pandemic hit. We can lighten our load as necessary. We can distill our work down to what we can manage today. Some days that will simply be self-care. But I urge that what we not do is narrow the scope of our spirituality. We can still be full on spiritual, even if our to-do list is a bit shorter, or our self-care is more of the focus. The teacher, Nancy Stark Smith, says that if you're only at 80%, be 100% of that 80%. If the pandemic has you down at 10% on some days, be 100% of that 10%. Whatever well you go to for nourishment, go to 100% of that well. Yes, you can still take time for Sudoku, and you can still get irritated by your dog, but also take time for a breath to connect with your well, to connect with all that is holy. Even just one sacred breath can tend your fire. There are days when you'll wish that you could take a vacation from this pandemic. Vacation means to vacate, to let go of, to float away from your problems into the vacuum. The notion of vacation can be appealing when you overwhelmingly need a break. But vacation merely gives you consolation for your problems. Better than vacation is Sabbath, like Kathleen spoke about in the story today. Sabbath means resting by going to your well. Sabbath means circling around your fire and our fire. Sabbath is not merely rest, it is rejuvenation. It is not a break, it is an expansion of spirit that restores. Sabbath is not a holiday, but a holy day. And it doesn't need to be a full day. Just take a holy breath, have a holy moment. Maybe sing "Morning Has Broken" when you wake up in the morning, and then find holy moments that keep your spirit singing throughout the day. Return to your well often. I think now of the song, "How Can I Keep From Singing?" There is a lyric, "Amidst the tumult and the strife, I hear the music ringing." Live your days such that the music stays with you amidst the tumult and the strife. There's another lyric, "Though the tempest round me roars, I know the truth, it liveth." It doesn't just console you, it lives, it brings you to life. "Songs in the night it giveth." It's another lyric. When we stay rooted in the good things, we can 100% feel our spirits, even if they're only at 10%. As we go to the well together, as we gather around the fire, how can we keep from singing?